Let me ask you a question. What if the biggest thing standing between you and the life you want isn't your circumstances? What if it's your mindset? Because most of us spend our lives trying to change what is happening around us. We want a better job, more money, more confidence, more opportunities. We keep looking outside ourselves, hoping that something will finally change our lives. But sometimes the life you want doesn't begin with changing your circumstances. It begins with changing the way you see them. The moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what can this teach me? The moment you stop waiting for motivation and start building discipline. The moment you stop trying to become someone else and start becoming the person you are capable of being. That is when your life begins to change. Because your future is not simply determined by what happens to you. It is shaped by the meaning you give to what happens to you. And today, I want to talk about the mindset you need, not just to achieve more, but to become more. Because before you can change your life, you have to change the way you think about your life. The first mindset you need to change your life is the ability to change your perspective. Because sometimes the problem is not what is happening to you. The problem is the way you are looking at what is happening to you. Two people can experience the exact same situation and walk away with completely different beliefs about themselves. One person sees failure and thinks, I'm not good enough. Another person sees the same failure and thinks, there is something I need to learn. One sees rejection as proof that they should quit. The other sees rejection as information, as direction, as a reason to improve. The event is the same. The interpretation is different, and that interpretation can change everything. We often think that changing our lives means changing our circumstances. We tell ourselves, when I get that job, I'll be happy. When I make more money, I'll feel successful. When people respect me, I'll feel confident. When everything finally goes my way, then I'll become the person I want to be. But life rarely works that way. There will always be something that doesn't go according to plan. There will always be people who disappoint you. There will always be moments when your efforts don't produce the result you expected. There will be days when you feel behind, confused, rejected, or exhausted. If your mindset depends on everything going perfectly, you will always be waiting for your life to begin. Changing your perspective means learning to see challenges differently. Instead of saying, this is happening against me, ask yourself, what is this situation asking me to become? That one question can completely change the way you experience difficulty. Maybe the setback is teaching you patience. Maybe the failure is showing you a weakness you need to work on. Maybe the rejection is pushing you toward an opportunity you would never have considered. Maybe the difficult season is forcing you to discover strength you didn't know you had. This doesn't mean pretending that everything is good. It doesn't mean ignoring pain or convincing yourself that failure doesn't hurt. It means refusing to let a difficult moment decide the meaning of your entire life. You can acknowledge that something hurts without allowing it to define you. You can admit that you're struggling without believing that you are incapable. You can lose something without believing that you have lost everything. That is the power of perspective. Think about a mountain. If you stand at the bottom and look straight up, all you see is how far you have to go. The climb looks exhausting. The distance looks impossible. You may even convince yourself that you will never reach the top. But take one step, then another, then another. Your perspective changes when you stop staring at the entire mountain and start focusing on the next step. Sometimes that's what you need to do with your life. You don't need to know how everything will work out. You don't need to have your entire future figured out. You don't need to know exactly where you will be 5 years from now. You simply need to ask, what is the next right thing I can do? When you change your perspective, problems become challenges, mistakes become lessons, criticism becomes feedback, delays become opportunities to prepare, and difficult seasons become chapters rather than definitions. There is another perspective shift that can change your life. Stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. We live in a world where we constantly see the results of other people's lives without seeing the process behind them. We see the success, but not the sacrifices. We see the achievement, but not the failures. We see the confidence, but not the years of doubt that came before it. And then we look at our own lives and wonder why we aren't further ahead. But your journey was never supposed to look exactly like someone else's. Your timeline is different. Your obstacles are different. Your starting point is different. Your strengths are different. So stop using someone else's life as a measuring stick for your own worth. The goal is not to become better than everyone else. The goal is to become better than the person you were yesterday. Perspective also means learning to appreciate what you already have while still pursuing what you want. Ambition is powerful, but if you are constantly focused on what is missing, you can become blind to what is already present. You can spend so much time chasing the next level that you forget to recognize the progress you've already made. Maybe you aren't where you want to be yet, but perhaps you are no longer where you used to be. Maybe you still have a long way to go, but perhaps you have already survived things you once believed would break you. Maybe your life isn't perfect, but that doesn't mean it isn't valuable. Gratitude doesn't mean you stop growing. It means you learn to grow without constantly telling yourself that your current life has no value. And perhaps the most important shift in perspective is understanding that you cannot always control what happens, but you can influence how you respond. You cannot control every opportunity. You cannot control every person's opinion. You cannot control every setback. You cannot control the past. But you can control the meaning you give to your experiences. You can choose whether a failure becomes an excuse or an education. You can choose whether criticism destroys your confidence or sharpens your character. You can choose whether a difficult season makes you bitter or makes you stronger. Every day, life gives you situations you didn't ask for. And every day, you get a choice about how you will look at them. The person who changes their perspective doesn't necessarily have fewer problems. They simply stop allowing every problem to become a reason to stop moving. They begin to understand that the same situation that once looked like the end can sometimes become the beginning of something completely different. And when you learn to look at your life through a different lens, you begin to notice possibilities where you once saw limitations, lessons where you once saw losses, and opportunities to grow where you once saw reasons to give up. Your circumstances may not change overnight, but the person experiencing those circumstances can begin to change. One thought, one decision, and one response at a time. The second mindset you need to change your life is taking full responsibility for where you are going, and what you choose to do next. This is one of the hardest things to accept because responsibility forces you to stop looking for someone else to blame. It asks you to stop waiting for someone to rescue you. It asks you to stop giving your power away to circumstances, people, timing, luck, or the past. There will always be things in your life that you did not choose. You didn't choose every difficulty you experienced. You didn't choose every disappointment. You didn't choose every person who walked away. You didn't choose every opportunity you missed or every unfair situation you had to face. But you still have a choice about what you do next, and that is where your power begins. Taking responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for everything that has gone wrong. It means recognizing the difference between what happened to you and what you decide to do about it. Maybe someone treated you unfairly. You may not have caused it, but you can decide whether you will allow that experience to control your future. Maybe you made a serious mistake. You cannot change the decision you made yesterday, but you can decide what that mistake will teach you today. Maybe you wasted years doing something that was never right for you. You cannot get those years back, but you can stop wasting the next 10. This is what responsibility looks like. It is not punishment. It is power. The moment you say, "My life is my responsibility," you stop waiting for perfect circumstances before taking action. You stop saying, "I will start when I feel motivated." You stop saying, "I would be successful if people supported me." You stop saying, "I can't change because this is just who I am." And you start asking better questions. What can I do? What can I improve? What can I learn? What decision can I make today that my future self will thank me for? Those questions shift your attention from helplessness to possibility. Because there is a dangerous habit that can quietly destroy your potential, constantly explaining why you cannot change. Maybe your reasons are real. Maybe they are completely understandable. But even when your reasons are real, they don't automatically become solutions. You can have a reason for staying stuck and still decide to move. You can be afraid and still act. You can be tired and still take one small step. You can be uncertain and still begin. Responsibility means understanding that you don't need to control everything to control something. You may not control the economy, but you can control how you develop your skills. You may not control what other people think, but you can control how seriously you take your own values. You may not control whether someone gives you an opportunity, but you can control whether you are prepared when one appears. You may not control how quickly success comes, but you can control how consistently you show up. And this is where many people misunderstand responsibility. They think responsibility means having complete control. It doesn't. Responsibility means owning your response. You cannot control the wind, but you can adjust the sails. You cannot control every storm, but you can decide whether you will keep moving. You cannot control every outcome, but you can control the effort, preparation, discipline, and attitude you bring to the process. When you understand this, you stop wasting energy fighting reality and start using your energy to create a response. Think about how much energy people spend blaming. They blame their parents. They blame their boss. They blame their partner. They blame the economy. They blame their past. They blame their lack of opportunity. And sometimes those things genuinely affected them. But blaming does not give you your future back. Responsibility does. Because blame asks, whose fault is this? Responsibility asks, what am I going to do now? That is a much more powerful question. You don't need to deny your past. You need to stop letting your past become a permanent prediction of your future. Your past can explain you without controlling you. Maybe you were raised around negativity. That may explain why you think negatively today. But it does not mean you must continue thinking that way forever. Maybe you were told that you weren't capable. That may explain why you doubt yourself. But you can still choose to challenge that belief. Maybe you failed repeatedly. That may explain why you are afraid to try again. But fear is not a command, it is a feeling, and feelings can be present while you move forward. Taking responsibility also means keeping promises to yourself. Every time you tell yourself you will do something and then repeatedly refuse to do it, you teach yourself that your own words cannot be trusted. But every time you make a commitment and follow through, even in a small way, you build self-respect. You say, I told myself I would do this, and I did it. That may seem insignificant, it isn't. Confidence is often built through evidence. You don't simply think your way into confidence. You create evidence that you can trust yourself. Wake up when you said you would. Do the work when you said you would. Practice when you said you would. Finish what you started. Take the difficult conversation you have been avoiding. Make the decision you know you need to make, not because you feel ready,